Welcome to Business Elevated, a Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity podcast. We explore the stories and strategies behind Utah's thriving economy. I'm Pete Codella. Today we're joined by Jefferson Moss. He became our office's executive director in June 2025 after being appointed by Governor Cox the previous month. Jeff has built businesses from the ground up and helped shape policy from within the Utah State House of Representatives. He's now at the helm of economic development in Utah, and he's here to share his vision. Jeff, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Why don't you tell our listeners what you like to do when you are not working?
Well, when I get the time, I really enjoy being in the mountains. I think that's probably my highest priority when I get some breaks. My family and I love to go hike, mountain bike, ski in the winter, just anything we can do. We love going to the Uintas. We love going up here, just up Little and Big Cottonwood Canyon. And then we also are big fans of Southern Utah. We used to spend a lot of time going to Arches and Zions, and although we still love those, we're really having a lot of fun going to some of these smaller parks, maybe those that don't get as much people. More of these state parks. It's been really fun with some of the additional state parks that we've been adding and putting more support over the last few years around these state parks. There's so many cool things that are out there that, at least for me, I didn't know a lot about those. And so we're just having a lot of fun trying to explore the rest of the state. So that's usually what we do in our spare time.
Well, you've got a fun background, entrepreneurship, venture capital, public policy. You spent time in the legislature. Now you're the top economic development worker in the state, leader in the state. Talk to us about this challenge and kind of what's your biggest priority coming out of this summer.
I see a lot of what my role is. I do appreciate that my role is to help lead this team. I really see the role of GOEO more than anything as a coordinator, convener, collaborator. And we see a lot of incredible things that are happening in the state. I've had the opportunity to participate in a number of different initiatives around the state through my legislative role and my higher education experience. The Port, the Point, MIDA, San Rafael, Fair Park. There's so many great things that are happening. And then I think about the innovation district that we're doing around the state that are really helping be these hubs of innovation and bringing higher education more as an economic development driver into our economy. And they play such a critical role. And then these great associations we have. We spent some time yesterday at the Capitol with some of our industry associations, and how fortunate we are that not only do we have incredible businesses in the state that are very entrepreneurial, our economy is doing very well, but that we've got these great industry associations that have vision and desire to really, take the state to the next level. Some associations like to just have a monthly meeting and charge some membership dues. They're all very proactively helping drive the economy. And so as you see all these great things that are happening around the state, I think one of my main roles is to just make sure we're really collaborating and coordinating. And that's been part of my focus. And in fact, we're working on right now kind of more of a strategic plan. And a big part of that is just this collaboration. Because at the end of the day, and anytime we're working with any of these individual organizations, or when we have businesses that are looking at Utah, that are excited about Utah, so many of these things overlap. The first thing they'll ask is, I'm looking for a great location. And obviously we have site selectors and we work with EDC Utah. There's some great things there. But having these tools like the Port, the Point, MIDA, just those alone is a great resource that we can share. The next thing I hear always is workforce. What can we do around workforce? And with this tight collaboration we've already had with higher education, and in fact, since I still have this dual role where I still have a direct involvement with higher education, I feel like we can really elevate and drive that even harder of having this tight-knit coordination on the workforce side. And that's the thing that I hear the most. And then obviously with housing, we've been given some of those responsibilities as it relates to economic development, but those are the things we hear the most of. And we've been having some really good conversations with Steve Waldrop and the folks at DWS on how can we partner even better as we're looking at economic development in the future of the state, and making sure that we can continue to drive places where people can live. That's one of the biggest concerns on economic development. So I think really that's my biggest excitement and role, is how do we just make sure we're kind of the ones that's bringing everyone together. I think the governor's office has a great opportunity where we can convene things. We'll continue to make sure that we're helping coordinate, throughout the state.
There's no doubt that to have a good economy, you have to have all these pieces you've talked about: higher ed, workforce. But if you can't house your workforce, they can't buy a home. That's a challenge that's got to be overcome somehow.
The question on that always is, what is the role that the government plays? I've been on the side of the policy side with the legislature, and obviously there's things that we can do. And then on the other hand, there's things that we cannot do. There's things that we can pull out. We think a lot about, and I'm looking through the policy lens, but we've been able to do some things to really streamline that process and making it more efficient. And I think that alone is going to have a big impact. But yeah, we'll continue to advocate for good policy, because the reality is it's getting harder and harder. The one thing on the housing piece that is actually really exciting to me is a lot of the things that we're seeing in the growth of our economy, things like aerospace and defense and energy and life sciences, we're finding that they're actually doing a lot more proactively wanting to be off the Wasatch Front. There's a lot of activity in northern Utah, southern Utah, central Utah. You think about specifically with energy, most of the resources for that are in rural areas and where there is more affordability. And so that's one of the things I think just by organically, I think there's going to be some improvement with the future growth of the state.
Talking about convening and collaboration, you want to share the concepts that you discussed with the legislature, Economic Development Council, convening a stakeholder group?
We've done elements of that before here. I think we want to make it a little bit more formal, not in the sense of it's like a formal stood up legal organization, but just that we need to get together and be aware of. I think this has been happening independently. We've had great conversations independently with different organizations, but just to have a monthly group where we can all sit around a table and be aware of what's happening around the state. And on the other hand, we get so many things through GOEO and things that we get through EDC Utah and other partners around the state that they're looking for support and resources and connections to be able to bring those to this group and say, hey, here's 3 or 4 really exciting opportunities. These are the things that they're needing help with. And for us to be able to just together come up with what can be the best solutions to help those businesses.
That is such a critical role of our office, and something government can do is bringing together. And our ecosystem is strong. Our economy keeps getting top accolades. So we're in a place of strength. And I think it's even more important to keep those lines of communication open and to bring those partners together so that we can support one another.
And I'll just add, Pete, the one exciting thing is that as we've talked, as I've gone out and met with all these groups, it's been great to hear that they are very excited for that. It doesn't feel like we're trying to push them to come together. Every individual, without a single exception, has said, we've really needed this. This will help a lot. And so it's good to hear that that's really the reception, is that this is something everybody feels like we need to be doing.
You've highlighted a couple industries, and I want to talk for a minute about Wasatch Front versus rural Utah. You know, you're looking at the state capital, about 2 million residents, much of the economic engine here along the Wasatch Front. How do we ensure economic opportunity and prosperity for Utahns who don't live along the Wasatch Front?
Yeah, I mean, this has been a huge priority for the governor. The Red TIF that we put together a couple years ago.
And that's the Rural Economic Development Tax Increment Financing Program, which allows more of a tax credit for those who grow outside of the Wasatch Front.
Pete, thank you for that clarification. I forget sometimes we talk in acronyms a lot. So we do provide incentives for businesses that we believe are going to bring significant economic benefit to the state, that will bring a lot of jobs to the state, which is really critical for us to continue to have the economy that we have. But we're selective about what types of companies that we include. We focus on the targeted clusters that we have. Even within those, we're careful about those that we think are really going to add a lot of value to the state. But there was a desire to really try to expand what we're doing in the rural parts of the state. And so this Rural Economic Development Program has already been very successful. Coupling that with a couple other things that I think are really helping, we've done some great initiatives around some of our mining incentives. We do a credit there that I think has really been helpful. As we look at the world today, even 3 years ago, I didn't hear a lot about energy and the need for energy. That's a daily conversation in both GOEO's world and in the legislature around how do we make sure that we can provide the energy that our state needs now, but with the new demands that are going to be there for energy. The great thing about that is so much of that is happening off the Wasatch Front. And so we're seeing a ton of opportunities. We're in the middle of a lot of really exciting potential projects that are popping up in areas that definitely are off the Wasatch Front. Now, within the Wasatch Front, I do think there's also some exciting things that are happening as well. Tech has, done very well. We're excited to continue to support our tech ecosystem. But we're seeing a lot of other things like downtown revitalization, I think is going to have a huge impact on our economy. It was just announced this week about Live Nation. We'll have 6,000 seats there. It'll be another thing that will continue to support our economic development here, not necessarily expanding people here, but creating more economic development drivers within our existing things that are happening here. So a lot of great things happening on the state.
That's a new indoor concert venue close to the Delta Center. And it just highlights, I think, that events that are driven by experiences, whether it's sports or the arts, really reinforce and support the downtown area and economy throughout the state.
Yeah, the last thing we want, yes, we want to continue to support and build our rural. I think that's a critical part of the governor's initiative and ours as well. At the same time, we want to make sure we keep a very robust capital city. When you go to some of these states and you go to their capital city and it becomes not a place you'd want to go visit and the economy is not great downtown. And I think that's great that we're really focusing on both, that we're going to continue to support our existing and even building our capital city. I think that's important as we look at how many people come through for trade shows and how many people come for skiing and they all spend time in downtown. We want to make sure that they also see that as a really robust, exciting place to be.
Jeff, I talked about this in the episode introduction, and you also brought up your legislative service. Let's talk about that just for a minute. Were you there a decade? Was it a little longer?
9 years. I was on the school board before that.
And served in leadership there. What would you say is your main takeaway from your time serving in the legislature?
I loved my time up there. I would say my main takeaway is you have a lot of people who are really trying to solve problems. And I know we often hear some of the things you hear in the press.
Well, it depends on which press you're reading, Deseret News or the Tribune.
Yeah, that's true. But just even what people hear publicly, right? Like a lot of the things that we've done up there the last couple of years really just didn't get a lot of coverage, but yet I think have the most significant impact on the state. Some of the efforts around energy, as I just mentioned, we're doing so many amazing things on that. Utah's leading out on it. I would look at what we're doing on artificial intelligence. Utah was the first state in the nation to lead out on that and creating a very pro-business, pro-innovation environment, while at the same time providing those safeguards and protections for our citizens.
And we've got the Artificial Intelligence Lab, which is part of Department of Commerce.
And that really is kind of the model now that a lot of states are adopting. And even the federal government has been very interested in what we're doing there. And obviously, there's a number of other things that I could speak to. I'm thinking more through the lens of economic development. But the majority of the people up there, I'd say all of them without any exceptions, are trying to find ways to solve problems. Everybody has different views and perspectives given from their districts that they represent. And they all are there to represent that group. But we have a very bipartisan group up there. Over, I think, 90% of the time, we vote together. Most of our bills, we work really closely with our Democrat partners. And I think that's one thing that I love about Utah is that we still have that kind of a dynamic. And even across the House and the Senate and the governor's office, I think that's one of our biggest competitive advantages is we talk to other legislators, which I did a lot. I'd go out and meet with other states, and they would talk about how much friction between either the House and the Senate or the House and the governor's office. And there is a healthy level of tension. That's important. That's part of what the founders wanted, was to have that check and balance. But we can move fast because we find ways to work together. And there's genuinely a respect and trust of each other. And I think that's critical. And so I look at the next, 10 years of where we're headed as a nation and with our economy. And I think speed, the ability to move fast, is probably going to be the most important thing. And we're hearing that more and more from businesses. I would say before it was incentives were probably their highest thing when we were out there 10 years ago. In the world we live in today, we want to move fast and we want to have a very stable, friendly government. And I think Utah can really shine in that area.
Technology is such a driver of that speed, and it's in every industry.
Yeah, you talk about AI, it literally touches every single industry. So having a great regulatory environment, it really is benefiting every industry.
One more legislative question from your experience. How will your experience there and connections there help as you lead economic development for the state?
I think it does help having those relationships and really having trust with my colleagues. I hope that will continue because I do feel like I have a lot of good relationships up there. I think the main thing is we want to make sure that we're aligned as they're looking at initiatives and efforts and the things that we're seeing from our side, from the business community, and really being an advocate for what I think the state's needs are to moving the state forward. And so I hope that, we can be very collaborative. It's been great the last couple of days being up on the Hill and having a lot of conversations with legislators about some of their ideas and thoughts. Frankly, what I hear mostly is how excited they are and how much they want to be involved. I had a lot of legislators that say, hey, keep me in the loop. This is really cool stuff. I want to be more involved in this. And so if we can work together, I think that'll be really helpful. And then as they're working on big initiatives, I think GOEO has been involved in the past, but we'd like to play a more active role in those conversations and making sure just that the side that we represent is really well reflected in their policy discussions.
We'll be right back after this short break.
Looking for the best place to grow your business? Welcome to Utah, ranked the #1 state for economic outlook 18 years running. Make the move to join global leaders in advanced manufacturing, aerospace and defense, life sciences and healthcare, software and IT, and financial services. With a young, educated workforce, smart tax incentives, and an unmatched quality of life, Utah is where innovation meets opportunity. Learn more at business.utah.gov.
So the Hatchman Index is something that ranks diversity of economies, and it compares a state's economy to the U.S. economy as a whole. Some of our listeners may not know that Utah is among the top 2 or 3 states as far as a diverse economy that's most like America's total economy, which helps us be economically resilient. How will your approach to economic development address both established industries and emerging sectors, which, like you've indicated, energy, maybe fintech? How does your cluster targeted industry approach help?
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that question. We are very fortunate in the state of Utah, and it's great because there's the clusters that we're aware of, and every day, I shouldn't say every day, but regularly, I hear of new exciting spaces of innovation. And sometimes that's just bringing 2 sectors together, right? So let's take healthcare and tech. Health data is becoming a huge sub-cluster. And so what we're looking at is we're doing our cluster analysis, which we're doing right now, is reassessing what are those broad targeted clusters that we need to be focusing on. And we're going to be looking at some that maybe weren't there before. As an example, energy has not been one of our targeted clusters. And yet I would say that's probably one of our most important right now. But even within those clusters, we're building out a strategic plan within each cluster with the associations and with those industries around how we can help support them going forward. And really what we want to drill down more into is, where do we have a competitive advantage? Where are things that we can really lean in and become a leader in some of these emerging technologies? And that's where, just having, whether it be energy with our own natural resources, whether it be AI, that we have the right regulatory framework and already a very robust tech sector, there's things that we already have that we can just accelerate and lean into. And then I look through the lens of workforce, having a more nimble workforce, which we really do in Utah. We've been very fortunate. We've got these vocational colleges that can do these custom fit programs. They can move really quickly. It's been really fun to see Talent Ready, which has been leading out on some of this emerging technology, because they're the ones that are hearing, hey, this is not really a space yet, but we've got a demand that's starting to grow, and Talent Ready can stand up a program within a year. And all of a sudden, we are now leading out on workforce in areas that didn't exist 5 years ago. And that's such a critical part of these emerging technologies. And then I would add one more piece, which is kind of in my other hat, that I work with Nucleus, and we have the Utah Innovation Fund, helping to drive new research commercialization out of our universities. And so we get an opportunity to see some of the most innovative, cutting-edge research that might be completely disrupting a whole industry or creating a whole new industry. And we get the opportunity to help support and fund those and connect them into the existing ecosystem. So that's another way we can really help drive these new emerging industries.
Let's talk about that for a moment. Your role in economic development for the governor and also with the Utah system of higher education. You mentioned the Innovation Fund, the Nucleus Institute. I think there's some cool synergies and opportunities here with innovation, education, workforce, economic development.
Yeah, and I appreciate the governor actually seeing that as an opportunity. When we first started talking about potentially coming over, it was to come and run GOEO. And it was clear he had a desire to want to bring that piece more into what we do in GOEO. And I also appreciate that we didn't necessarily want to roll it up under. There's a different role, different mission. It is nice to have it tied into higher education. It has its own independent entity that can be very nimble and move quick. But to have those two working in collaboration and really tightly aligned, I think is really going to be helpful for us because we have much deeper understanding and perspectives on that workforce side. And like I said, the commercialization side. The Utah Innovation Fund has invested in 17 companies in the last 2 years. 5 or 6 of those are already seeing tremendous success raising follow-on funding. But that's our future GOEO companies, right? And the great thing is too, we've had GOEO as actually through some of our economic assistance grants have been able to help support those. We've been able to provide some additional seed funding to get them started, but it's nice that we've been able to provide additional support to really accelerate some of these companies getting outside of the university and really becoming, successful businesses. And some of our most successful businesses in the state actually did come from universities, have been a huge impact for the economy. So the more we can help support and grow those, I think it'll be just continue to help support the overall ecosystem here.
Anytime we've got a company in Utah that starts out and grows, we've had a number, I don't remember the stat, but Utah has more unicorns per capita than other states. Anytime we can grow a company, we grow wealth here in our state. And it contributes, I think, to Utah's middle class, to access for opportunity that Utah seems to enjoy more than other states.
Yeah, I would agree. And I would just say, it's interesting because we play a pretty small role in that, right? Government does. We're very fortunate, for instance, our tech ecosystem. We have a very robust venture capital network here. That's, I think, the reason you're seeing the highest per capita. We're also one of the highest in venture capital per capita that's invested into companies. A lot of that in the past has been through the traditional kind of business-to-business SaaS tech companies. And again, they play a very critical role. What we're seeing even more now as we're moving forward is this deep tech space. That's in the aerospace, defense, life sciences. And those are companies that do take a little bit more capital on the front end. It's a little more risky on the front end to even get those out and get them launched. They take a little more time. And we don't have as much of a robust ecosystem in venture here. It's coming. We've been seeing more. We're seeing a lot more venture funds from out of the state and even out of the country that are wanting to get more aware of and get access to this deal flow. But I think that's where, GOEO and where the Utah Innovation Fund do play a role, because without having some additional support, it's really hard to get those launched. And then the goal is, of course, is that we help with that very early capital, and then the private market takes over, which is where the private market want to really lean in, is after they've kind of vetted that original proof of concept. So I think that's really where we can continue to help support that. And I see those as some of our biggest opportunities in our state is in the life science, aerospace, defense, and energy areas.
Yeah, I want to be sure we highlight the fact that, you're a former business owner. You know the realities of building a business, of being an entrepreneur, of wearing all the hats. You want to talk about how our office can help support the entrepreneurial ecosystem here in the state?
Yeah, we've got some programs already. Startup State is making a big effort on that, working with giving resources. I had a friend living on my couch making a cool journal, and I said, I really like that. We should try to make that a company. At the time, I was the only one that could actually get a credit card. My two partners didn't have great credit. And so I self-funded that with $50,000 of credit cards in my early 20s to get that business launched. So I've experienced the kind of blood, sweat, and tears. But the thing that really would help, and where I was benefited because I had met good mentors, I knew where to go for different things. I had a friend who was a banker who gave me perspective on what it takes to get a bank loan. Having those kind of connections is so critical. And I think that's really what Startup State is trying to do, is to be able to provide those resources, to connect them, throughout the state, connecting to local, even if they're off, down in southern Utah. There's a lot of great programs that are down there that we can help connect them into to provide that support.
What's one message you'd like to share with Utah's business community about the future of economic development in Utah?
Yeah, I would just say we're very lucky to be in Utah. Again, I spend a lot of time traveling the state, meeting with other organizations, other legislators. Everybody is saying, you guys are so lucky. I get that we have challenges. Growth has brought some additional challenges, but I think our best days are ahead of us in Utah. I feel very strongly that all the right things are here. We have the right ecosystem. We have the right workforce. We have the right regulatory environment. So many things are going well. And then you think about the other things, the Olympics, things that are going to continue to put Utah more on the national, even international stage. I just think Utah's got an incredible future ahead of us. And of course, our job is to help support that business community. And I think we want to continue to play a very active role in being a resource connector. I think that's our job, right? So if we can help these businesses, whether it be through the Startup State, whether through our economic assistance grants, there's a number of tools that we have, but we're here to help support you. And also we want to get feedback. We want to know, what can we do better? How can we improve our efforts here to support the business community?
You've been our executive director nearly 12 weeks now. We have about 100 employees in our office. Many are located in regions around the state to support businesses, economies in those regions. Is there something you've observed or you'd like to highlight about the team at GOEO?
I think there's a very good dynamic. I love the fact that the team feels very strongly about the mission. People really genuinely want to help the state. And that's something that we're lucky to have people that are willing to go into public service, right? It obviously doesn't pay as well as in private, but they very much just care about the state of Utah. I had a conversation yesterday with one of our employees. He said, I've almost left a couple times. I've had different job offers, but I want to make sure that my kids inherit what I had. And I want to make sure that Utah continues to be the best place to live and to work. And I think that's the thing that's really come out from the team is there's a lot of passion around making sure Utah's a great place.
So our final question for our guests this year is the same. It's what do you find most rewarding or inspiring about being part of Utah's business community?
It's the energy that we have here. There's just a buzz. You just, when you come to Utah, and I hear this all the time from people out of state, that there's just something special. This feeling of being part of a community. Even though we're a larger state, there's still this feeling of this connectivity that people still feel like, they're not 3 steps removed from each other, right? There's a lot of collaboration that's happening. And just as you go out and talk to people in the industry, just how many people are just really excited about where things are. That is something unique. You don't hear that everywhere you go. Just that there's a lot of excitement and vision around how Utah can continue to be a global leader and be an incredible place to do business.
We've been speaking with Jefferson Moss, the new executive director in the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. Thanks for taking some time to join us on the podcast, Jeff.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Partnerships are vital to the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. By working closely with agencies, businesses, educational institutions, and other organizations, we can more effectively promote economic growth, create jobs, and support communities throughout Utah. Today, Jonathan Friedman, President and CEO, and Rich Israelson, Chief Revenue Officer at World Trade Center Utah, join us for a brief partner conversation. Jonathan Friedman, welcome back to the podcast, and Rich Israelson, welcome to the podcast.
Pete, great to be here, and thanks for having us.
Tell us what's new at World Trade Center Utah.
It has been a busy year, to say the least, with constantly changing trade policy out of Washington, D.C. World Trade Center Utah really stepped up to the plate, the team here at WTC Utah, and tried to be the very best resource that we can possibly be to entrepreneurs, business leaders up and down the state. We've been maintaining our tariff dashboard on WTCUtah.com, which has been like a really great resource for businesses. We distill everything you're hearing out of Washington into a digestible format so that companies can actually go and understand how it affects them. And we've heard from companies around the country that local agencies in their own states outside of Utah are pointing them to our tariff dashboard on our website. We also hold a weekly trade and tariff webinar, again, trying to make ourselves as available as possible to businesses across the state.
Jonathan, I think you've highlighted it. It's that change and uncertainty that really makes it difficult for businesses to plan and to know what the month or the next month might look like, especially those engaged in international trade.
That's right. And as businesses need to make investments, they're all trying to grow. They need safe havens. They need that certainty. Otherwise, they simply can't make those decisions.
I'd love to hear a story about a Utah company that your team's helped navigate a new market or overcome a specific trade barrier.
One unique thing that we offer at World Trade Center Utah we're really proud of is the foreign trade zone. There are very few solutions out there to tariffs and shifts in duty rates around the world. And the foreign trade zone, which in partnership with Salt Lake City, we just transferred recently to World Trade Center Utah, is one of those solutions. It's not a silver bullet, but it really does have a dramatic effect on a company's bottom line. It's a powerful tool out of the Department of Commerce that has been in our state since 1977. It's been housed in the municipality of Salt Lake City, and we've partnered together to transfer to WTC Utah so that we can focus on companies, not just, of course, just in this area, but across the state. So as companies participate, their facility becomes part of the foreign trade zone. And then anything that they import, components, let's say, as a manufacturer here, it doesn't hit U.S. soil and there's no dutiable event triggered. So they're at a minimum able to defer duties and certain tariffs. In many cases, they're able to reduce or potentially eliminate those duties. It changes the economics of a business. And then there's lots of strategies here, like you can import and then you can export, and then there's no event triggered where they need to pay duties and certain tariffs. So, or you can ship from zone to zone, as a lot of like the major auto manufacturers kind of require their contractors to work in that way. So there's lots of strategies. Our team can help advise companies on how best to utilize the foreign trade zone. Like I said, it's a powerful tool, and we're proud to partner with Salt Lake City to expand that statewide. Ultimately, there are some obstacles, like you need to be a certain distance from Customs and Border Patrol, which is currently housed at the Salt Lake City International Airport. So we're working to make that statewide. Currently, companies up and down the Wasatch Front can take advantage of that. Historically, there's been one company in the state that has utilized the foreign trade zone. Now, just in the last, 6 or 8 months, we have 18 companies that have applied for the zone and some have been approved of that 18, or they're waiting for approval. And then we have another 100 in the pipeline behind them. But honestly, we want that to be in the thousands. And the whole objective there, of course, is to help companies with their own growth. Really, we want to keep as much of their capital here in our state, growing our economy, providing for high-paying jobs and sustainable growth, as opposed to sending that in taxes to the federal government.
So if you're a Utah business and you create a product and you're facing these tariffs, reach out to World Trade Center Utah, see if they can help. Is that fair?
That's right. Or even if they're just importing a widget and they are storing that for, let's say, 6 months or a year and selling it off in lots or individual units, all that duty that they would have to pay up front can be deferred until the product actually leaves their facility. Lots to talk about on the tariff front and foreign policy front out of Washington, but that is one solution that Utah companies can utilize.
Let's talk about something that you've done for a few years, the Crossroads of the World International Trade Summit. I'd love for you to just highlight what that event is, how it went this year.
In partnership with Zions Bank, they're a tremendous partner. We've put on this International Trade Summit annually for the last couple of years. We're planning to do the same in 2026. And this is a resource for Utah companies to come and participate and hear from global leaders. Our objective is to make this a global conference that just happens to be in Utah. We want it to be a world-class conference, and we've really pulled that off. This past May, we had 3 former secretaries of state, Mike Pompeo, Anthony Blinken, Condoleezza Rice. We had 3 former prime ministers join us, Theresa May of the UK, Jacinda Ardern of New Zealand, Kevin Rudd of Australia, and many other CEOs and government leaders that gave Utah companies access to the best information and advice. We often actually look for global leaders that are no longer in office because they can speak freely. They're not just rehearsing talking points of their current administration, but really can be candid and honest with Utah.
Let's talk about trade missions. World Trade Center Utah works with our international trade and diplomacy team for the governor's trade missions. I know we've gone to Canada, and I know Rich has been part of those things. So, Jonathan, do you want to cue it up and then maybe let Rich add some color?
Absolutely. That'd be great. It's important to the governor, as we've, met with him since the new administration took over in January. It's important to him that Utah shows up and finds opportunities. We want to always be a friendly and willing partner to our trade partners around the world. So we went to Canada in the spring.
I think we were the first state to be there since, the beginning of the year.
Yes, and it was a big deal at the time, especially in April. A lot of people asked us, are we canceling this trip? Like, how can we go to Canada right now? And Governor Cox said, absolutely not. This is when we shine as a state of Utah. It was phenomenal. What happens in every single trade mission is that the governor opens valuable doors to the business community. It's a real magical experience for those that participate in these delegations. We covered mining, aerospace and defense, investment. There's lots of of sectors that these delegations represent. And it is truly an incredible experience. When we went to Canada, it was really almost an emotional, not almost, it was in many cases an emotional experience. It was such a warm reception. We were warm, they were warm. It was just fantastic. WTC Utah, we focus on the follow-up. These trade missions are never a once and done, trip. The follow-up is the most important. Rich and Jared from our team were just in Ontario last week with a mining delegation with Brian Summers, Utah Mining Association, as a follow-up trip. Our priority again is to have lasting impact. Rich, share some highlights.
So in April, when we attended, we built a really nice entry relationship with the Ontario Mining Association and really felt a kinship and a collaboration there. And when we left, we just knew we needed to get back as soon as possible, meet again with the Ontario Mining Association. In that trip, they had invited us to come back and to go up to Sudbury, which is in northern Ontario. And they said, if you really want to understand mining in Ontario, you need to go to Sudbury. So we took them up on it, and they could not have been more gracious. We spent a couple days on the ground in Sudbury. We went underground into the mines. We learned really some great things about what they're doing. We're able to share some of our collaborative skill sets and strengths. And then perhaps most importantly, built that relationship to another level to then invite them back to Utah, which we're hoping to do as early as December, and let them see what we're doing here and just continue to build that relationship. Good things happen when people trust one another. We're very far down the road of a great trusting relationship with the Ontario Mining Association and other associated groups within Ontario.
And the goal is that leads to working together on projects, exchanging materials, right?
100% economic development for both regions. Great opportunities there where we're both pulling things out of the ground. We're both finding solutions for processing, and we see great economic development opportunities for both us and for our neighbors in Ontario.
Talk for a minute about what it means to have Governor Cox go on these trade missions. I think there's 1 or 2 a year. How does the governor's presence help those types of relationship building activities?
It's a game-changing experience. We are not only grateful for his time, but we really value his time. We want to make sure that it's time best spent. He opens doors, he creates connections, he gets things moving. He's the impetus, I'd say, and then there's all sorts of momentum. And we follow up with the business community to ensure that those are lasting and impactful.
What would you like to share about World Trade Center Utah's priorities for the rest of this year, maybe through next spring when you have your next summit?
One thing that I think is an important tool that we administer is the Small Business Administration STEP grant. You get over $500,000 annually that we break up into smaller grants for companies that are interested in growing their exports. Part of growing in a sustainable way here in our state is to grow our capabilities to export products. 95% of the world's consumers are outside the United States. That's an enormous opportunity for Utah companies to grow their sales around the world. And so we send companies on these trade missions, we send them to trade shows, but this STEP grant is just a great way to pay for travel expenses, marketing, whatever export needs a company has. We'd love to be in touch with them and help them get this money. We'd love for Utah companies to contact us if they feel that this grant could be helpful to them.
Is the STEP grant available only in a certain time or just throughout the year?
Throughout the year. I just want to make sure it's on top of mind for companies. We're able to facilitate high-level government meetings and connections for Utah companies to navigate some of this uncertainty and also look for ways for real growth opportunities. We look for opportunities to either lay the groundwork for governor-led trade missions or follow up on a prior trade mission.
Rich, what are you looking forward to the rest of the year?
We have a trip to Korea later this month, focusing on the aerospace and defense industry. And that's going to just further solidify the relationships that are building there with our Korean office there, with the University of Utah, satellite campus, Asia campus. Those opportunities in Korea just are never ending. So looking forward to that trip. That'll be a great trip.
That's our partner conversation with Jonathan Friedman, President and CEO, and Rich Israelson, Chief Revenue Officer at World Trade Center Utah. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks so much, Pete.
Here is a quick update from the Economic Opportunity Office for the week of September 7th, 2025. Don't miss the Utah Tourism Conference in Bryce Canyon City on October 1st through the 3rd. Hear from keynote speaker Josiah Brown, participate in engaging sessions, and enjoy unique social experiences such as destination discovery activities and the Boots, Hats, and Canyon Views opening dinner. Only a few days left to apply for the Economic Assistance Grant. This grant assists Utah businesses in promoting and supporting economic opportunities and provides services related to industry, education, community development, and infrastructure. Learn how to qualify and apply for this grant on our website. To learn more about any of our updates, please visit business.utah.gov.
Thanks to our office marketing communications team for their work on this episode. You can find and follow us on social media at Business Utah. Please feel free to email us with feedback or episode suggestions at business@utah.gov. The Business Elevated podcast is published by the Utah Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity. I'm your host, Pete Codella. Thanks for listening.
The views and opinions of podcast guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the Governor's Office of Economic Opportunity or the state of Utah.